Welcome to Symposia Soundbites, hosted by Balchem. I'm Andy Vance with Feedstuffs. We're at the Cornell Dairy Nutrition Conference, where at Balchem's pre-conference symposium, we heard a number of presentations geared toward nutritionists in a consulting nature out in the field, things you can use in your daily walk of life. Joining me from Balchem, Dr. Clay Zimmerman, who is Global Business Director for the protein platform at Balchem. Dr. Norman St. Pierre was near and dear to my heart as a fellow Buckeye, was one of the presenters. If you had to describe Dr. St. Pierre's talk in 60 seconds or less, what was it about?
So his presentation was on assessing amino acid bioavailability with particular emphasis on methionine. So he talked through methodologies for assessing amino acid bioavailability. Basically, his points are that the whole concept of bioavailability was established initially for pharmaceuticals, which makes sense. It's much more complicated with a ruminant animal where the body is producing amino acids and the microbiome is producing amino acids as well. So actually measuring amino acid bioavailability in a ruminant is extremely difficult, and there's really no gold standard for measuring amino acid bioavailability, particularly in dairy cows.
So if I'm a nutritionist sitting in the audience listening to that talk, what does that mean for me in the real world, knowing that that's a pretty important piece of information to have?
Yes, so it's really important when you're visiting with rumen protected amino acid suppliers to ask for the data. Where did the bioavailability data come from? There are some people only do in vitro testing, benchtop testing, which does not take the animal into account at all at that point. There certainly is in situ testing, but really you want to make sure that there's some sort of in vivo testing where the products are actually fed to animals to assess amino acid bioavailability.
Dr. St. Pierre talked about that, the importance of doing that in vivo testing. He acknowledged it's not cheap to do, but when you actually want actionable data, you have to do it.
Yes, that's correct.
Explain that for folks, why there's such a gap, if you will, between doing that benchtop testing that maybe isn't as useful as you might like versus out in the real world, so to speak.
Yeah, so particularly with rumen protected products, if you're only doing benchtop testing, the cow, first of all, it's not being mixed into the feed. So feed stability is a huge part of assessing amino acid bioavailability. It's not taking into account the cow actually eating the product and what's happening in the rumen, and then ultimately how digestible it is in the small intestine. So you're trying to mimic with these in vitro techniques. You're trying to mimic some pieces of that process, but you're missing a lot of the actual. You're missing the biology basically, and the feed stability component.
So putting yourself in the boots of one of the attendees of the symposium, listening to Dr. St. Pierre's presentation, what's the one thing that you wrote down on your notepad, the take home, if you will?
My take home with methionine in particular, there is a methodology that's not been used a lot, but it's published and it's the best methodology out there as far as trying to assess methionine bioavailability. It's a milk selenomethionine technique that was pioneered at The Ohio State University. So if I was purchasing a rumen protected amino acid product, I would want to ask that supplier, do they have data utilizing that technique?
Pretty important takeaway. I want to thank Dr. Clay Zimmerman for talking to us about the presentation at the Balchem Pre-Conference Symposium given by Dr. Norman St. Pierre about the bioavailability of amino acids. For Symposia Soundbites, I'm Andy Vance with Feedstuffs.